She laughed. Not under her breath. Not nervously. She laughed right at Judge Caprio. "Sorry," she said, smirking. "Is this supposed to scare me? My father is Congressman Whitfield. This will be thrown out before lunch." An audible gasp rippled through the courtroom. Kendall Whitfield had just rolled her eyes at an 80-year-old judge. The gallery froze. Judge Frank Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't scold her. He simply said 4 words, 4 quiet words, that erased the smile from her face. Timestamp, 10:14 a.m. Defendant laughs at presiding judge. References anticipated political intervention by Congressman father. Those words weren't a threat. They weren't an insult. They were far worse. They were a request. And what followed would dismantle Kendall Whitfield in front of everyone. Her attorney, Reginald Crane III, clutched her arm, his grip tightening in warning, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The laugh had already bounced off the courtroom walls. In the gallery, Congressman Theodore Whitfield shut his eyes. 14 years in Congress. Judiciary Committee connections. Quiet favors called in. Problems erased. This time, none of it would help. His wife, Victoria, stared at her hands, as if shrinking might make her disappear. The shift, from arrogance to desperation, would take exactly 30 seconds. It would become the most replayed courtroom moment of the year. And it would start with Judge Caprio's calm, steady voice. But not yet. Caprio let the laughter linger. He allowed the silence afterward to stretch. Thick, uncomfortable, suffocating. The room seemed to inhale and forget how to breathe. Then he leaned forward, fingers folded neatly on the bench. "Miss Whitfield," he said evenly, "you find this funny?" Kendall was still smirking. Still untouchable in her own mind. "I think this is a waste of time," she replied. "We both know how this ends." Caprio tilted his head slightly. "Do we?" He reached for a small remote on his desk. "Then let's begin. Miss Okonkwo, dim the lights." The clerk crossed the room. The lights faded. A wall-mounted monitor flickered to life. Confusion crept across Kendall's face. Her confidence cracked. She hadn't known there was video. And then Judge Caprio said the 4 words that changed everything. He looked straight at Kendall Whitfield, his voice steady, unmistakable. "Show me the video." The screen brightened. Color drained from Kendall's face. She snapped her head toward her attorney. Reginald Crane rose instantly, urgency cutting through his polished tone. "Your Honor, the defense hasn't had sufficient time to review this evidence." Caprio didn't blink. "This footage is public record. School security video. It clearly shows what your client did on November 12th. Sit down, counselor." Crane sat. The clerk read aloud, "Evidence log, security footage. Street Catherine's Elementary School. Camera 3. Main crosswalk, east entrance. Date: November 12, 2024. Time: 3:22 and 17 seconds p.m. Duration: 47 seconds. Quality: high definition." And as the video began to play, Kendall Whitfield finally understood. This courtroom was no longer laughing with her. The video began to play. A digital timestamp glowed in the corner. 3:22 and 14 seconds p.m. The screen showed a school crosswalk in the soft chaos of dismissal. Children spilled out in every direction, some clutching backpacks, some holding parents' hands, others laughing in small clusters as they headed home. At the center of the crosswalk stood a woman in a bright yellow reflective vest. Patricia Giordano. Everyone called her Miss Patty. She raised one hand toward traffic, guiding 3 children across the street. Calm, confident, routine. Something she had done hundreds of times before. Then a white car entered the frame. It was moving fast. Too fast. A little girl stepped off the curb, 6 years old, pigtails bouncing as she followed the others. Emma Vasquez. First grade. Walking home. The car did not slow. Miss Patty saw it. Her head snapped toward the sound. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. What happened next, 3 seconds of footage, would follow Kendall Whitfield for the rest of her life. Miss Patty lunged forward and shoved Emma out of the car's path. Hard. Emma flew toward the curb, her backpack tumbling away, her mouth open in a scream the silent footage could not capture. Miss Patty took the impact. The courtroom speakers carried the sound anyway, the dull, sickening thud of metal against bone. Her body slammed onto the hood of the white car, rolled up the windshield, then dropped. The front wheel caught her, dragged her. The vehicle didn't stop for another 14 feet. Kendall Whitfield's face drained from pale to gray. One hand flew to her mouth. The video kept playing. The white car sat still. 3 seconds passed. 4. 5. Then the brake lights glowed red. The car reversed, slowly, pulling back from the motionless body lying in the road. A cold mechanical voice appeared as captions beneath the footage. 3:22 and 19 seconds p.m. Impact with victim. Estimated speed. 47 miles per hour in a 15 miles per hour school zone. 3 hours 22 minutes and 21 seconds. Vehicle stops after dragging victim 14 feet. 3 hours 22 minutes and 26 seconds. Vehicle begins reversing. 3 hours 22 minutes and 29 seconds. Vehicle drives around victim's body. 3 hours 22 minutes and 32 seconds. Vehicle exits school zone at high speed. License plate clearly visible. The car steered around Miss Patty's broken body, crumpled in the middle of the crosswalk, and accelerated away, disappearing from the frame. The image froze. Teachers were rushing toward her. Children were screaming. And in the corner of the screen, Emma Vasquez sat on the curb, hands covering her face. No one in the courtroom breathed. Then Judge Caprio's voice cut cleanly through the silence. Miss Whitfield, that is you behind the wheel. We've confirmed the license plate. Your cell phone records place you at the scene. You're not disputing that you were driving this vehicle, correct? Kendall's voice barely carried. No. You stopped, Caprio said calmly. The video shows you stopped. You had 5 seconds to step out and help. He paused. Instead, you reversed and drove around a woman bleeding in the street. I didn't see. You stopped, he repeated. You would have had to see her, Caprio said quietly. You can't drive around someone without seeing them. The frozen video still filled the screen. Miss Patty's broken body in the crosswalk. Teachers running. Emma Vasquez curled on the curb. If you believe arrogance has consequences, Caprio continued, watch closely, because this wasn't even the worst part. He let the image stay. Do you know why that woman is lying in the road, Miss Whitfield? Kendall didn't answer. She couldn't. Her name is Patricia Giordano, Caprio said. Everyone calls her Miss Patty. She's been a crossing guard at St. Catherine's Elementary School for 23 years. His voice was slow, precise. She saw your car coming. She saw that you weren't slowing down. She saw that you weren't stopping. He paused, and she saw a 6-year-old girl standing directly in your path. A soft sob broke the silence in the gallery. Kendall turned toward the sound. A woman sat in the third row, tears streaming down her face, hands pressed to her chest. That's Rosa Vasquez, Caprio said. Her daughter Emma is the child Miss Patty pushed out of the way. He looked back at Kendall. Emma Vasquez is alive today because a crossing guard saw your car and made a split-second choice. The clerk read from the incident summary. Victim: Patricia Giordano, age 61, school crossing guard. Action: observed defendant's vehicle approaching crosswalk at unsafe speed. Pushed child Emma Vasquez, age 6, out of vehicle's path. Result: child uninjured. Victim sustained full impact. Serious injuries. Caprio's tone hardened. Miss Patty's injuries were catastrophic. A shattered pelvis that required surgical reconstruction. A femur broken in 2 places. A fractured wrist. Internal bleeding. He didn't rush. 4 surgeries. 7 months of physical rehabilitation. Kendall's eyes were glassy now. She walks with a permanent limp, Caprio continued. Doctors say she may never fully recover. She's 61 years old. He leaned forward. For 23 years, rain or shine, she stood in that crosswalk making sure children got home safely. Then the numbers landed. You hit her at 47 miles per hour in a 15-mile-per-hour school zone. You dragged her 14 feet. A beat. And then you drove away. Kendall's voice cracked as tears finally spilled. I didn't know she was saving a child. I didn't see her. I swear, I didn't. You didn't see anything, Caprio said evenly, because you were texting. The room stiffened. You weren't watching the road, Miss Whitfield. You were looking at your phone. Caprio reached for another document. I have your cell phone records. Obtained by warrant. He adjusted his glasses. At 3:22 p.m. on November 12th, you sent a text to a friend. I'll read it exactly as written. He looked up. OMG, this traffic is killing me. I'm going to be so late for drinks. Rolling eyes emoji. He glanced back down. Your friend replied, LOL, just drive faster. Caprio raised his eyes. That message was sent at 3:22 and 14 seconds p.m. The exact second the video began. The impact with Miss Patty occurred at 3:22 and 17 seconds p.m., Caprio said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That's 3 seconds after your text. The timeline appeared on the screen, 3:22 and 14 seconds p.m. Defendant sends text. OMG, this traffic is killing me. I'm going to be so late for drinks. Friend responds, LOL, just drive faster. 3:22 and 17 seconds p.m. Impact with Patricia Giordano. 3 seconds, Caprio repeated. That's the time between pressing send and hitting a woman in a school crosswalk. The courtroom was completely silent, except for Rosa Vasquez. Her quiet sobbing filled the space no one else could breathe in. And then, Caprio continued, here's what you sent 8 minutes later. He paused before reading it, letting the weight settle. 8 minutes after you left her bleeding and broken in the street. He read slowly, carefully. Finally out of that school zone nightmare. See you in 20. He looked up. School zone nightmare. That's what you called it. Not I just hit someone. Not I need help. Not call an ambulance. You texted about meeting friends for drinks. Kendall was crying openly now. Her hands trembled. I panicked, she sobbed. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. You knew enough, Caprio replied calmly, to reverse your car. You knew enough to drive around her body. You knew enough to flee the scene. You knew enough to text about drinks. He leaned forward slightly. You just didn't know enough to stop and help. Rosa Vasquez's sobs grew louder. Kendall looked toward her, and for the first time, something broke through the entitlement. Grief. Rage. A mother's raw, unfiltered pain. Then Judge Caprio reached for another file. And now, he said, setting the phone records aside, we need to address something unusual about this case. In the gallery, Congressman Theodore Whitfield shifted in his seat. His jaw tightened. This case was originally assigned to Judge Harold Petton, Caprio continued. Different courtroom. Different judge. He flipped a page. 2 days after your arrest, Miss Whitfield, your father, Congressman Theodore Whitfield, contacted Chief Judge Morrison. A ripple moved through the room. Everyone knew what this meant. He requested that the case be transferred. Caprio paused. Interestingly, he requested it be transferred back to Judge Peton, because somewhere between arrest and arraignment, the case had been reassigned to me. The clerk displayed the document. Case transfer documentation November 14, 2024. Phone call from Congressman Theodore Whitfield's office to Chief Judge Morrison. Request. Transfer case 2025, CR 0445 to Judge Harold Peton. Reason stated. Scheduling conflicts and judge familiarity with similar cases. Request denied. November 15, 2024. Reginald Crane shot to his feet. Your Honor, discussions regarding case assignments are privileged communications. They are public record, Caprio cut in, when a member of Congress attempts to influence judicial proceedings. He didn't look at Crane. This isn't private, counselor. It's potential obstruction. Sit down. Crane sat, his face flushed red. Caprio's voice turned colder. Judge Peton is a respected jurist. He was also appointed 3 years ago with strong support from Congressman Theodore Whitfield, who sits on the committee overseeing judicial appointments. He lifted another page. Chief Judge Morrison's memo states, and I quote, request denied. Judge Caprio assigned due to high-profile nature of case and the need for unimpeachable integrity and independence. Caprio looked directly at the congressman. Congressman Whitfield, you sit on the Judiciary Committee. You understand better than anyone that attempting to influence case assignments is improper at best, and potentially criminal at worst. The room was frozen. The House Ethics Committee will be notified of this attempt. Congressman Whitfield rose to his feet, his voice tight, carefully controlled. Your Honor, I was only trying to make sure my daughter received a fair hearing. Caprio didn't hesitate. You were trying to place your daughter in front of a judge you helped appoint, someone who might feel gratitude toward you, he said sharply. That isn't fairness, Congressman. That's corruption. His voice lifted just enough to command the room. Sit down, sir. If you speak again without being asked, I will hold you in contempt and have you removed. The congressman sat. His wife refused to look at him. And then Rosa Vasquez stood, and the courtroom shifted. She walked slowly to the front, her steps cautious but deliberate. At 32, she looked older in that moment, worn thin by fear, trauma, and a gratitude that still hurt to carry. When she spoke, her voice trembled, but it did not break. My name is Rosa Vasquez. My daughter, Emma, is 6 years old. She's in first grade at St. Catherine's. She turned toward Kendall. That woman almost killed my baby. Her words landed hard. She was driving too fast. She was looking at her phone. Emma was in the crosswalk. The signal said, walk. The crossing guard had her hand up. My daughter had every right to be there. Rosa swallowed. Miss Patty saved her. She steadied herself. She saw that car coming. She pushed Emma out of the way. Emma hit the curb hard, scraped her hands and knees. She was screaming. A pause. But she was alive. The clerk read softly, Victim Impact Statement, Rosa Vasquez. Miss Patty saved my daughter's life. She took the hit that would have killed my child, and the driver left her there. Rosa's voice grew stronger now, anger burning through the grief. Miss Patty chose my daughter over herself. She's 61 years old. She has grandchildren. She has a life. Her voice shook again. And she gave up her health, maybe forever, to save my little girl. Tears streamed down her face. My daughter has nightmares now. Every night. She wakes up screaming about the car. She asks me every single day if Miss Patty is going to die. Rosa's voice cracked. She's 6 years old. She shouldn't be afraid of crosswalks and cars. She should be thinking about dolls and cartoons and learning how to read. She turned fully toward Kendall, who sat frozen, tears sliding silently down her face. And this woman didn't stop. Rosa gestured toward the screen. The video shows it. She stopped for 5 seconds. She saw Miss Patty lying there, bleeding, and then she drove around her body, like she was garbage in the road. Her voice broke completely. My daughter was watching. Emma saw everything. She saw Miss Patty get hit. She saw the car drive away. Rosa covered her mouth for a moment, then forced the words out. She keeps asking me why the lady didn't help Miss Patty. Why she didn't call 911. Why she didn't stop. She shook her head. I don't have an answer. There isn't one. There's no explanation that makes sense. No excuse. She looked straight at Kendall. Emma is alive because Miss Patty is a hero. And Miss Patty will never walk the same again, because this woman cared more about drinks with her friends than a child's life. That was the moment Kendall Whitfield broke. The quiet tears turned into sobs, deep, uncontrollable, racking her entire body as the weight of what she'd done finally crushed down around her. The composure was gone. The arrogance had evaporated. That awful, entitled laugh felt like it belonged to someone else, someone she barely recognized. Kendall Whitfield stood on unsteady legs, hands clasped together as if in prayer. Please, Your Honor, please. Her voice shook. I didn't know she was saving a child. I didn't see her. I didn't see any of it clearly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She swallowed hard. Please don't send me to prison. Please. She was begging now, truly begging. Her voice was cracked, desperate, stripped bare. I made a mistake. I was stupid. I was texting. I wasn't paying attention, and I know it was wrong. I know it. Tears streamed down her face. Please give me another chance. I'll do anything. Community service. House arrest. Rehab. Anything. Please. I'm begging you. Her attorney reached for her arm, trying to guide her back to her seat. She shook him off. I'll dedicate my life to fixing this, she pleaded. I'll work with crossing guards. I'll pay Miss Patty's medical bills. Whatever it takes. Just, please, don't send me to prison. The courtroom was silent. 5 seconds passed. 7, 10, 12. In that silence, a congressman's daughter learned that power has an expiration date. Judge Caprio waited until the quiet became unbearable. Then he spoke, his tone calm, almost gentle. Miss Whitfield, he said, 30 seconds ago you were laughing in my face. He didn't raise his voice. You told me this courtroom was a waste of time. You said this case would be dismissed by lunch. You rolled your eyes at me like I was an inconvenience. A pause. Now you're crying, begging, pleading for mercy. Caprio leaned forward slightly. That's not remorse, Miss Whitfield. That's fear. Kendall shook her head, sobbing. Remorse would have stopped the car, he continued. Remorse would have called 911. Remorse would have stayed at the scene. His voice remained steady. Remorse would have made you get out and help Miss Patty instead of driving around her body. Remorse would have made you ask for help, instead of texting about drinks. I'll change, Kendall cried. I promise. I'll be different. I'll be a better person. Caprio nodded once. You'll have time to prove that, he said. Plenty of time. He picked up his pen. But right now, what I'm seeing isn't accountability. It's self-preservation. He met her eyes. You didn't cry when you hit Miss Patty. You didn't beg when you drove around her broken body. You didn't plead when you called it a school zone nightmare. The room held its breath. You started begging, Caprio said evenly, the moment you realized your father couldn't make this disappear. Kendall froze. You begged when you saw the video. When you understood that money, power, and a congressional seat wouldn't save you. He paused. That isn't growth, Miss Whitfield. That's damage control. Judge Caprio removed his glasses and set them carefully on the bench. When he spoke again, every word carried the weight of 4 decades on the bench. Years spent watching people reveal exactly who they are when consequences arrive. Let me tell you what I see when I look at you. The courtroom was silent. I see a young woman who has never been told no. Someone who has never faced a real consequence in her life. Someone who walked into this courtroom believing her father's name would shield her from accountability. He didn't look away. I see someone who struck a 61-year-old crossing guard, watched her bleed in the street, and made a conscious decision to leave her there so she wouldn't be late for cocktails. Kendall's shoulders shook. I see someone who didn't cry until she realized she'd been caught on video. Until she realized this wouldn't just go away. Caprio glanced at his notes. The record reflects no genuine remorse prior to the presentation of evidence. Emotional distress occurred only after the consequences became unavoidable. This demonstrates a long-standing pattern of entitlement and avoidance of accountability enabled by family influence. He looked back up. That's not remorse. That's fear of punishment. And those are 2 very different things. Caprio picked up his sentencing papers. Here is my ruling. The sound of paper seemed deafening. First, your bail is revoked, effective immediately. You will be remanded into custody pending trial. Kendall gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Second, this case is referred to Superior Court for felony prosecution. He listed the charges one by one, each heavier than the last. Vehicular assault causing serious bodily injury. Hit and run causing serious injury. Failure to render aid. Reckless driving causing injury. Texting while driving in a school zone. He paused. These charges carry significant prison time. Kendall's knees nearly buckled. Third, I am recommending no consideration for early release. You are a flight risk, and your family has already demonstrated a willingness to interfere with judicial proceedings. He tapped the file. The attempted case transfer confirms that. Fourth, restitution in the amount of $400,000 to Patricia Giordano. Kendall looked up. This will cover medical expenses, rehabilitation, lost wages, and compensation for permanent disability, Caprio continued. You will pay this personally. Not your father. Not a trust. Not campaign funds. You. Fifth, a lifetime driving ban. A collective breath caught in the room. You have proven beyond any doubt that you cannot be trusted behind the wheel. You will never hold a valid driver's license in this state again. Caprio didn't slow. Sixth, for the duration of your sentence, however long that may be, you will write 1 letter per month to Miss Patty. These letters will detail your rehabilitation, your reflection, and your understanding of the harm you caused. He looked toward Rosa Vasquez. She may read them. She may throw them away. That choice is hers. You will still write them. And seventh, you will personally fund enhanced crossing guard safety equipment, warning lights, reflective gear, and speed monitoring systems, at 10 schools across Rhode Island. His voice sharpened. You will make sure no other crossing guard ends up like Miss Patty because a driver like you couldn't be bothered to pay attention. Caprio turned toward the aisle. Officer Cole, take the defendant into custody. Kendall spun toward her father, her face unraveling. Daddy, Congressman Theodore Whitfield didn't move. He couldn't save her. Not now. Not here. 14 years of influence. Committees. Favors. Power. None of it mattered in this courtroom. Officer Cole stepped forward. The handcuffs clicked shut behind Kendall's trembling wrists. She was led toward the door, crying, looking back at her parents with every step, as the reality finally settled in. For the first time in her life, the name Whitfield meant nothing. Victoria Whitfield cried quietly, her shoulders trembling. The congressman stared straight ahead, his expression locked, unreadable. But the story didn't end with handcuffs. It ended with something none of them expected. Transformation. 16 months later, Kendall Whitfield stood trial in Rhode Island Superior Court. The case was airtight. The video, the cell phone records, testimony from teachers, parents, and first responders at St. Catherine's. There was nowhere to hide. Her attorneys were blunt. Fighting it would only make things worse. Kendall pleaded guilty to every charge. The sentence was swift. 5 years in state prison. No parole consideration for the first 3. The final record read, State of Rhode Island versus Kendall Whitfield vehicular assault, felony hit and run causing serious injury, felony failure to render aid, felony sentence. 5 years, Rhode Island State Prison parole eligibility. After 3 years minimum restitution, $400,000 additional conditions, lifetime driving ban, monthly letters to the victim. Funding for statewide crossing guard safety equipment. Congressman Theodore Whitfield faced his own reckoning. The House Ethics Committee investigation confirmed improper attempts to influence the judiciary. He was formally censured, a rare punishment that exploded into national headlines. In the next election, voters delivered their verdict. He lost by 12 points. Exit polls were unforgiving. Abuse of power. Hypocrisy. Family values rhetoric shattered by protecting his daughter instead of protecting children. Election results. Rhode Island 1st District Theodore Whitfield, incumbent 42% Marcus Chen, challenger 54%, the largest defeat for a Rhode Island incumbent in 34 years. The irony was impossible to miss. A man who built his career on protecting children lost everything after his daughter nearly killed one, and he tried to cover it up. Patricia, Miss Patty, Giordano received the restitution. She used part of it to create the Crossing Guard Angels Fund, providing enhanced safety gear to crossing guards across the state. 14 months after the crash, she returned to St. Catherine's Elementary. She walked with a cane now. Some days the pain was so intense she could barely stand. But she walked. On her first morning back, every child in the school lined the sidewalk. Teachers cried. Parents applauded. And Emma Vasquez, now 7 years old, alive, healthy, ran to her. Miss Patty! Miss Patty! You came back. Patty lowered herself carefully, wincing, and wrapped Emma in a tight hug. Of course I came back, honey, she said softly. This is where I belong. The Providence Journal covered it the next day. January 18, 2026. Crossing guard returns after life-threatening injury. Patricia Giordano, who saved a child's life, receives a standing ovation from students, parents, and teachers. Emma's nightmares faded with time. She started drawing pictures of Miss Patty as a superhero, cape and all, and brought her a new one every week. During show and tell in 2nd grade, Emma stood up proudly and said, Miss Patty saved me. She pushed me out of the way of a bad car. She's the bravest person in the whole world. Rosa Vasquez became a volunteer advocate for the Crossing Guard Angels Fund. She spoke at school safety assemblies across Rhode Island, telling Patty's story. Why drivers must slow down. Why attention matters. Why children's lives are worth 30 seconds of patience. Miss Patty didn't hesitate, Rosa would say. She saw my daughter in danger, and she moved. And that choice, one ordinary woman in a reflective vest, changed everything. She didn't pause to think about herself. She didn't weigh the risk. She didn't hesitate. She saw a child in danger, and she moved. That's what heroes do. Kendall Whitfield's letters from prison began as empty words. The first 5 read like assignments completed out of obligation. Polite apologies, vague promises, nothing real. The prison counselor sent them back every time and told her to try again. By the 6th letter, something had changed. It was no longer performative. It was honest. I watched the video again last week. I asked to see it. I made myself watch it. I saw myself hit you. I saw your body roll across my hood. I saw you fall. I saw myself stop. And then I saw myself drive away. I saw myself choose to leave you lying in the street. I don't know who that person was. I look at her and I don't recognize myself. But it was me. I can't pretend it wasn't. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I see who I was. And I'm trying, really trying, to make sure that person never exists again. Letter excerpt, Kendall Whitfield to Patricia Giordano. Month 14. Patty wrote back. 1 page. No anger. No lecture. Just this. I believe you're trying. That's more than I expected. Keep trying. That's all any of us can do. Try to be better than we were yesterday. Kendall kept that letter under her pillow. She read it every night. 3 months after the trial, Patty's Law was introduced in the Rhode Island legislature. It passed unanimously, one of the rare moments when both parties agreed without hesitation. The law established mandatory minimum sentences for hit-and-run crashes in school zones. Texting while driving in a school zone became an automatic felony. Enhanced penalties were created for fleeing the scene when the victim was protecting children. The governor signed the bill at St. Catherine's Elementary School. Patty stood beside him, leaning on her cane, smiling. Emma Vasquez stood next to her, holding her hand. Judge Frank Caprio kept a photograph on his desk. It showed Patty on her first day back at St. Catherine's, surrounded by children, all reaching for her, hugging her, smiling up at her. Emma wrapped her arms around Patty's legs, grinning. Patty was smiling too. Despite the cane, despite the pain, despite everything. Beneath the photo, in his careful handwriting, Caprio had written, "This is what a hero looks like." He looked at it every day. When cases wore him down. When arrogance entered his courtroom. When people with money and power believed they were untouchable. He looked at Patricia Giordano, 61 years old, walking with a cane, surrounded by the children she protected for 23 years. And he remembered why the law mattered. Why accountability mattered. Why no name, no matter how powerful, was ever bigger than justice. Dramatization for storytelling and education purposes only.